Something is watching me through my mirror. I sat with it for 3 days before I decided to tell anyone. Not because I was scared. I mean, I was. But because I couldn't figure out how to say it without sounding like I lost my mind. And honestly, I'm still not sure I haven't. But I'm going to try. I'm going to walk through it exactly how it happened, detail by detail, because I think the details matter. I think they're the only thing keeping me sane right now. If I can lay it all out clearly, maybe it'll make sense. Maybe someone will tell me there's an explanation. I don't think there is, but maybe. I live alone. I've lived alone for about 2.5 years now, ever since my roommate Kyle moved out to go live with his girlfriend in Portland. The apartment isn't anything special. A one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a converted house in a quiet part of town. The kind of neighborhood where you hear lawnmowers on Saturday mornings and the occasional dog barking in the evening, but not much else. My landlord is an older guy named Gerald, who lives on the 1st floor and mostly keeps to himself. The 2nd floor is rented by a woman I've only spoken to maybe 4 times. She works nights. I know this because I sometimes hear her leaving around 10 and coming back around 6 in the morning. Her footsteps are soft. She wears flat shoes. That's the kind of thing you notice when you live in a place like this. You learn the sounds of the building. My bedroom is small. There's a queen bed pushed against the wall, a dresser I bought from a thrift store when I was 23, and a mirror. That mirror has been in this apartment longer than I have. It was here when I moved in. It's tall, maybe 5.5 feet, mounted to the wall across from my bed. The frame is dark wood, a little scratched up, nothing ornate. I never thought much about it. I used it to check my outfit before work, to fix my hair, normal things. It was just a mirror. I want to stress that. It was just a mirror for 2.5 years. The first thing that happened was so small I almost didn't register it. It was a Tuesday night. I remember because I had just come back from the grocery store, and I always go on Tuesdays after work. I was putting things away in the kitchen, and then I went into the bedroom to change into something more comfortable. I pulled a t-shirt out of the dresser, and as I was turning, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Just a normal glance, the kind you do without thinking. But something about it made me stop. Not because I saw something wrong. It was more like a delay. Like my reflection was a fraction of a second behind me. I stopped moving and stared at it. My reflection stared back. Perfectly normal. Perfectly still. I blinked. It blinked. I told myself I was tired and changed my shirt and went to the kitchen to make dinner. I didn't think about it again that night. The next few days were completely ordinary. I went to work, I came home, I watched TV, I slept. I should probably mention what I do. I work in data entry for a logistics company. It's not exciting, but it pays the bills and the hours are predictable. I leave at 7:45, I'm at my desk by 8:15, and I'm home by 5:30. Routine. I like routine. It keeps things steady. It was maybe 5 or 6 days later when the second thing happened. I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, which does not have the same mirror, just a small medicine cabinet with a mirrored door. And I had this sensation, I don't know how to describe it properly. Have you ever been sitting in a room completely alone and suddenly felt like the room was occupied? Not that you heard something or saw something, but the air itself felt different, heavier, like someone had just stepped into it. That's what I felt. I was leaning over the sink, and the feeling came from behind me and to the left. I straightened up and looked in the little medicine cabinet mirror, angling it to see behind me. Nothing. The hallway was empty. The bedroom door was half open, and through it I could see the edge of my bed and the far wall. Nothing. But the feeling didn't go away. It lingered. I turned around and walked to the bedroom doorway and looked in. My bedroom was exactly as I left it. The lamp on the dresser was on, casting that warm yellowish glow it always does. The bed was unmade. My phone was on the nightstand, and the mirror was there, reflecting the room back at me. I stood in the doorway for probably 15 seconds, just looking. Everything was in its right place. I went back to the bathroom and finished brushing my teeth. Before I went to bed, I closed the bedroom door all the way. I don't usually do that. I don't know why I did it that night. Over the next week, nothing happened. I want to be honest about that. I didn't see anything, didn't feel anything. Life was completely, boringly normal. I started to think I'd been stressed, maybe not sleeping well enough. I'd been staying up later than usual watching a show, and my diet hadn't been great that month. I wrote it off. The human brain does strange things when you're overtired. Then came the night I woke up. It was a Thursday, I think. Maybe early Friday. I know it was after midnight because I checked my phone when I sat up, and it read 1:17. I hadn't been dreaming, or if I had, I couldn't remember it. I just woke up, clear, alert. The way you do when a noise pulls you out of sleep. Except I hadn't heard a noise. The room was quiet. The kind of quiet that has a texture to it. No hum from the fridge, which I can usually hear faintly through the wall. No traffic outside. Nothing. I was lying on my side facing the wall. I didn't move at first. I just lay there, listening. After maybe 20 seconds, I became aware of something. Not a sound exactly, more like the feeling of a sound. Like the air pressure had shifted slightly on the side of the room behind me, the side with the mirror. I rolled over. The room was dark, but not completely. There was a faint glow coming in from the streetlight outside, filtering through the curtain. Enough to see shapes. I could make out the dresser, the outline of the mirror. I could see my own shape reflected dimly in the glass, a dark form on the bed, propped up on one elbow. I stared at it for a long time. Nothing moved. Nothing was wrong. I told myself to go back to sleep, and I did eventually. But it took a while. I lay there in the dark, facing the mirror, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was looking at something that was also looking at me. Not my reflection. Something behind it, or inside it. I don't know. That sounds insane. I know it does. The next morning I felt fine. Daylight has a way of making nighttime fears seem ridiculous. I got ready for work, glanced at myself in the mirror as usual, and left. That evening I came home, made pasta, watched an episode of something, and went to bed. Normal. But I started paying more attention to the mirror. I didn't mean to, it just happened. Every time I walked into the bedroom, my eyes went to it. Not in a panicked way. More like the way you'd keep glancing at a stranger sitting too close to you on a bus. A low-level awareness. I'd catch my reflection and look at it for an extra beat, scanning for something off, and every time it was perfectly normal. Just me, in my room, doing whatever I was doing. I started to feel stupid about it. About 2 weeks after the night I woke up, I was sitting on the edge of my bed putting on socks. It was morning, a Saturday. I was getting ready to go for a run. The room was bright, full daylight, curtains open. I leaned down to pull the sock over my heel, and as I came back up, I looked at the mirror. My reflection was looking at me. I know how that sounds. That's what reflections do. But let me explain what I mean. When I leaned down, my reflection should have been leaning down too. And it was mostly, but its head was tilted slightly toward me. Like it had been watching me while I was bent over and hadn't quite corrected itself yet by the time I came back up. The angle was wrong by just a degree or two. The tilt of the neck was just slightly off from what mine should have been. I froze. I didn't move. I just stared. And as I stared, the reflection settled. It corrected. Like a camera, autofocusing. One moment it was fractionally wrong, and the next it was fine. I sat there on the edge of my bed with one sock on, looking at my own face looking back at me, and I felt my heart start to beat harder. I got up and walked to the mirror. I stood about a foot away from it and looked directly into my own eyes. The reflection was perfect. I raised my right hand. It raised its left, as expected. I tilted my head. It tilted. I opened my mouth. It opened its mouth. Everything was synchronized. Everything was normal. I stood there for maybe a full minute, testing, watching, waiting. Nothing. I went for my run. I ran harder than I usually do. I didn't think about the mirror while I was outside. The sun was out. It was warm. People were walking their dogs. The world was normal and solid and made sense. By the time I got home and showered, I had convinced myself that I'd imagined it. A visual glitch, a trick of perception. I even looked it up online later that afternoon. Apparently, there's a phenomenon where your brain can misinterpret the angle of your own reflection, especially in peripheral vision. Something about the way mirror symmetry interacts with spatial processing. It made sense. I bookmarked the article and moved on. For about a week, nothing happened. I started sleeping well again. I stopped paying extra attention to the mirror. I was even a little embarrassed about how much I'd let it get to me. On the following Friday, a guy from work named Dennis invited me out for drinks after our shift. We went to a bar downtown, had a couple of beers, talked about nothing in particular. I got home around 10, feeling relaxed. A little buzzed. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, and got into bed. I didn't look at the mirror. I fell asleep fast. I woke up at 2:41. Same as before. No dream, no noise, just a sudden clarity. Eyes open, mind alert, room silent. This time I was lying on my back. I could see the ceiling above me, the faint outline of the light fixture I never use because I prefer the lamp. I didn't move. I just lay there breathing. And then, very slowly, I turned my head to the right, toward the mirror. In the dark, I could see my reflection, a shape on the bed, lying on its back, head turned toward me. We were looking at each other. Two dark shapes in a dark room, separated by 10 feet of air and a sheet of glass. Everything about the reflection matched. The position of the arms, the shape of the blanket, the angle of the head. But there was something wrong with the eyes. I couldn't see details. The room was too dark for that. But the reflection's eyes seemed to catch more of the faint light than they should have. They had a dull gleam to them. Not bright, not glowing. Just reflective in a way that didn't match the ambient light. I stared at those eyes for a long time. I don't know how long. Minutes. The gleam didn't change. It didn't blink when I blinked. Or maybe it did, and I just couldn't tell in the dark. I wanted to get up and turn on the lamp. I wanted to look at the mirror in full light and prove to myself that everything was fine. But I couldn't make myself move. Not because I was paralyzed. I could feel my legs, my arms, my fingers. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Because some part of me, some deep and ancient part, was telling me not to draw attention to myself. Not to let it know I could see it. It. Not my reflection. It. That's the first time I thought of it that way. I eventually rolled over, facing the wall, and pulled the blanket up to my chin. I lay there until my alarm went off at 6:30. I don't think I slept at all. That morning, I stood in front of the mirror and examined it carefully. In daylight, it was just a mirror. I looked at the frame, ran my fingers along the edges. The glass was cool and smooth. There was a small chip in the lower left corner of the frame that had always been there. Nothing was different. I looked at my reflection. It was perfect, responsive, synced, normal. I went to work and couldn't concentrate. I kept thinking about those eyes, that dull gleam. I tried to rationalize it. Light plays tricks. Your pupils dilate in the dark and can reflect ambient light differently. The street light outside could have hit my face at an angle that made my eyes look odd in the mirror. There were explanations. There are always explanations. After work, I went to a hardware store and bought a sheet of black fabric. When I got home, I draped it over the mirror. I used thumbtacks to pin it to the wall above the frame so it wouldn't slip. The fabric hung down and covered the glass completely. I stood back and looked at it. It looked a little weird, like a covered painting in a haunted house movie. But it was better than the alternative. I could uncover it in the morning to use it, then cover it again at night. Simple solution. That night I slept through until my alarm. No waking up, no feeling of being watched. Just 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep. The next night was the same. And the next, I fell into a new routine. Uncover the mirror in the morning, use it to get ready, cover it before bed. It became automatic, like locking the front door or turning off the stove. I stopped thinking about it. Almost 2 weeks passed like that. Calm, quiet, normal. I started to think the whole thing had been some kind of stress response, Maybe a mild sleep disturbance that the covered mirror had fixed simply by removing the stimulus. I even considered taking the fabric down for good. It seemed silly, this big black shroud in my bedroom. Then one night I was lying in bed reading on my phone. It was about 11, not late. I was comfortable, relaxed. The lamp was on. The room was warm. I was reading an article about deep-sea fish, which I know is random, but I find that kind of thing calming. I finished the article and locked my phone. As I set it on the nightstand and reached over to turn off the lamp, I glanced at the covered mirror. The fabric was moving, not blowing. There was no breeze. The window was closed. The heating vent is on the opposite wall. But the fabric was moving. It was a slow, gentle undulation, as if something behind it was breathing. The bottom edge of the cloth would push outward just slightly, maybe half an inch, and then ease back, out, back, slow and rhythmic. I watched it for what felt like forever but was probably 30 seconds. Then I got out of bed and walked to the mirror. I don't know why. Some part of me needed to see, needed to know. I grabbed the bottom edge of the fabric and lifted it. Behind it was my reflection, standing, looking at me. Nothing wrong with it. Just me, in my t-shirt and boxers, holding up a piece of fabric. The reflection was doing the same thing. I looked at it closely. It was me, completely me. I let the fabric drop and stepped back. But here's the thing. The fabric was still after that, completely still. For the rest of the night I watched it. It didn't move again. The next day at work, I called my landlord Gerald and asked if there was anything behind the wall where the mirror was mounted. He said it was just the exterior wall. No plumbing, no venting. I asked if there had ever been issues with drafts in the apartment. He said no, but he'd come up and check if I wanted. I told him it wasn't necessary. I started keeping a notebook. I don't know if that was smart or obsessive, but I felt like I needed to track things. Dates, times, what I saw or felt. I wrote down everything I've told you so far, plus small things I hadn't thought were significant at the time. Like the fact that my cat. I have a cat, I should have mentioned that. His name is Arlo. He's an orange tabby, about 4 years old, very calm, very predictable. He sleeps on the end of my bed every night without fail. But I realized, looking back, that for the past several weeks, Arlo had not been sleeping on the bed. He'd been sleeping in the living room, on the couch, every night. I didn't think anything of it at the time because cats change their habits sometimes. But when I reviewed the timeline, it lined up. Arlo stopped sleeping in the bedroom right around the time the first incident happened. I tried an experiment. I picked Arlo up and carried him into the bedroom. He was fine in my arms, purring, relaxed. But the moment I set him on the bed, he went still. Not scared exactly, alert. His ears rotated toward the mirror, the covered mirror, and he stared at it. After about 10 seconds, he jumped off the bed and walked out of the room. I tried this 3 more times over the next 2 days. Same result every time. He'd stare at the mirror, then leave. On the 4th attempt, he growled. Arlo has never growled in the 4 years I've had him. I stopped bringing him into the bedroom after that. Around this time, I started noticing something else. It was subtle, and I wasn't sure about it at first, so I didn't write it in the notebook right away. But in the mornings when I uncovered the mirror to use it, the glass felt different. Not the temperature. It was always cool in the morning, like any glass surface would be. It was the texture. When I'd accidentally brushed my fingers against it while removing the fabric, the glass felt almost soft. Not dramatically. Not like touching fabric or skin. Just slightly less hard than glass should be. Like there was a microscopic give to it. A yielding. I tested this multiple times. I'd press my fingertip to the glass firmly and hold it there. It felt like glass. Solid, smooth, hard. But when I'd touch it lightly, just a graze, there was something wrong with the way it met my skin. I know this sounds like I was losing it. I thought I was losing it, but I kept testing, and the sensation was consistent. One morning I pressed my palm flat against the mirror and held it there while I looked at my reflection. My reflection had its palm pressed against the glass too, of course. Our hands were lined up, separated by whatever fraction of an inch the glass was thick. I held it there for a long time, and I could swear, that I felt warmth, not from the glass, from behind it, from the other side, like pressing your hand against a window when someone is pressing from the other side. I pulled my hand back. In the mirror, my reflection pulled its hand back too, and on the glass where my palm had been, there was a handprint. Mine. Fog from the warmth of my skin condensing on the cool surface. Normal. Expected. But there was also a handprint on the other side, or at least there appeared to be. Slightly larger than mine, slightly different in the spread of the fingers. It faded within a few seconds, so I couldn't examine it closely. But I saw it. I took a photo with my phone. By the time I raised the camera, the second print was gone. My handprint was still faintly visible, but fading too. The photo just showed a mirror with a vague smudge on it. Nothing conclusive. Nothing I could show anyone and say, "Look, do you see it?" That's when I started to understand the nature of this thing. Whatever was happening, it operated in margins, in the space between seeing and not seeing, in the half-second delay, the 1-degree tilt, the almost imperceptible movement. It was never overt, never undeniable, always just enough to make me question it, but never enough for proof. Like it knew exactly how much to show me, like it understood the threshold. I called my friend Sarah. She's the most level-headed person I know. Works as a structural engineer, very practical, very grounded. I told her I'd been having trouble sleeping and that I thought my apartment might have some kind of draft or vibration issue that was messing with me. I didn't tell her about the mirror specifically. She offered to come over and take a look, and I said yes. She came by on a Saturday afternoon. She walked through the apartment, checked the windows, the vents, the walls. She didn't find anything unusual. When she got to the bedroom, she looked at the covered mirror and asked what that was about. I told her I'd been covering it because the streetlight reflection was keeping me up at night. She nodded. She didn't question it. She pulled the fabric aside and looked at the mirror. "This is old," she said. She tapped the glass with her knuckle. "Good quality, though. Probably original to the house." I asked her what she meant by original. She said the house was built in the early 1920s, and the mirror looked like it could be from that era based on the frame style and the way it was mounted. She pointed out that it was attached directly to the wall studs, not just hanging. Whoever put it there meant for it to stay. I asked Gerald about the mirror later that week. He said it had been there since before he bought the house in 1987. The previous owner's estate had left most of the furnishings, and he'd never seen a reason to remove them. He said a few tenants over the years had asked about it, but no one had ever requested it be taken down. I asked if he knew anything about the previous owners. He said the house had been owned by a couple named Hargrove, and the husband had died in 1983. The wife had been in a care facility for several years before that. Gerald didn't know much else. I thought about looking into the Hargroves, but I wasn't sure what that would accomplish. This wasn't a ghost story. I didn't think the mirror was haunted in any traditional sense. What was happening didn't feel like a haunting. It felt like observation. Like something was on the other side of that glass and it was watching, patiently, carefully. The way you'd watch an animal through the glass at an aquarium. The notebook entries got more frequent. I started documenting things I wasn't even sure were real. A faint sound at night. So quiet it might have been nothing. Like a fingernail being drawn slowly across glass. The feeling when I was falling asleep that the air in the room was shifting, becoming denser near the mirror and thinner near the door, like something was displacing it. The way Arlo would sometimes sit in the hallway outside the bedroom and stare into the room without entering, his eyes fixed on a point halfway up the far wall, right where the mirror was. I want to talk about what happened on a Wednesday. I don't know the exact date. It was about 2 months after the first incident. I had come home from work, eaten dinner, watched TV. Normal evening. Around 9, I went into the bedroom to change into sweats. The fabric was still over the mirror. I reached up to uncover it, and then I stopped. I stood there with my hand on the fabric, and I listened. There was a sound coming from behind the cloth, behind the glass. It was breathing. Slow, steady, like someone sleeping. like someone standing very still and breathing through their nose with their mouth closed. Quiet enough that you'd never hear it if the room wasn't absolutely silent. Quiet enough that if the fridge had been humming or the wind had been blowing, it would have been lost entirely. But the room was silent, and I heard it. I stood there for a long time, maybe 3 minutes, maybe 5. The breathing didn't change. It didn't speed up or slow down. It didn't react to my presence. It was just there, constant, like it had always been there and I'd just never been quiet enough to hear it. I didn't uncover the mirror. I changed in the bathroom. I got into bed with the lamp on and lay there, facing the covered mirror, listening. I couldn't hear the breathing anymore. The fridge had kicked back on and the ambient noise of the building had resumed. The settling of old wood, the faint creak of pipes. The sound was gone, but I knew it had been there. I stopped using the mirror entirely after that. I got dressed in the bathroom. I checked my hair in the medicine cabinet mirror. I didn't uncover the bedroom mirror. I didn't touch it. For about a week, this worked. The apartment felt calmer. Arlo even came and slept on the bed one night, which felt like a good sign. Then things started changing in a way I didn't expect. I noticed it first in the bathroom mirror, the little medicine cabinet one. I was shaving and I had my face close to it, and I saw something in the background of the reflection. Something in the hallway behind me, just visible through the open bathroom door. It was a shadow. Not a sharp one, more like a darkening of the air in one spot, about the size and height of a person standing in the hallway. When I turned around, the hallway was empty. When I looked back at the mirror, the shadow was gone. 2 days later, I was washing my hands, and I looked up into the medicine cabinet mirror and my reflection smiled. Not a big smile, just the faintest upward curl at the corners of the mouth. I was not smiling. My face was neutral. I was looking at a version of myself that was slightly, almost imperceptibly smiling. It lasted maybe 2 seconds, and then my reflection matched my expression again. I closed the medicine cabinet. Then I opened it and looked again. Normal. Just me, concerned, tired, a little pale, not smiling. I started avoiding mirrors, all of them. I took the medicine cabinet mirror off the wall and put it in the closet. I stopped looking at my reflection in windows. I turned my phone screen away from me when it was off so I wouldn't see myself in the black glass. I know how this sounds. I know this sounds like the behavior of someone who is unraveling. And maybe I was. But I need you to understand. The things I saw were real. They were small and subtle and deniable, but they were real. Something was watching me through those reflective surfaces, and it was becoming less careful about hiding. About a week after I took the bathroom mirror down, I was in the kitchen making coffee in the morning. The kitchen window faces east, and in the early morning, before the sun is fully up, the glass acts like a mirror because it's brighter inside than outside. I was standing at the counter, waiting for the coffee to drip, staring absently at the window reflection, and in the reflection I saw the hallway behind me, and standing in the hallway was a figure. It was dark. Not a shadow this time, a shape. The rough outline of a person standing in the hallway between the bathroom and the bedroom door. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there. In the reflection, it was maybe 15 feet behind me. I could see it clearly enough to tell that it was tall, taller than me, and that it was facing my direction. But I couldn't make out features. No face, no clothing, just a shape. I didn't turn around. I don't know why. Something told me that turning around wouldn't help, that it wouldn't be there if I turned around, that it existed only in reflections, in the glass, in the in-between space where the real world and the mirrored world overlap. I stood there watching it in the window, and it stood in the hallway watching me. The coffee maker gurgled and hissed behind me. Outside, a car drove past. The shape didn't move. After about a minute, the sun crested above the building across the street, and the window went transparent, and the reflection disappeared, and the shape was gone. I turned around. The hallway was empty. I called in sick to work that day. I sat on the couch with Arlo and stared at the wall. I was trying to think clearly, to organize what I knew. Something was in the mirror, or behind it, or accessible through it. It had started with the big mirror in the bedroom. Now it seemed to be spreading to any reflective surface. It was getting bolder, more visible. What had started as a fractional delay, a barely perceptible tilt, was now a full figure standing in my hallway. But only in reflections, only in the glass. I thought about moving. I thought about breaking the mirror. I thought about a lot of things. But something stopped me, and I'm going to try to explain this because it's the part I struggle with the most. I wasn't just scared. I was curious. There was something about the way it behaved, the patience of it, the restraint. That didn't feel malevolent. It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a tension. Like something on the other side of a very thin barrier was aware of me and was trying to communicate that awareness without breaking through. Does that make sense? It was showing itself gradually, in increments, as if testing what I could handle, as if it didn't want to frighten me, or at least not more than necessary. That thought scared me more than anything else. I went back to work the next day and tried to function normally. I avoided all reflective surfaces as much as possible. At the office, there's a large window in the conference room, and during an afternoon meeting, I caught myself staring at it. I could see the reflection of the room, the table, my coworkers, the whiteboard. And in the far corner of the reflected room, near the door, there was a shape, the same shape, standing, watching. I looked away. I didn't look at that window again. It had followed me, or it hadn't followed me. Maybe it had always been there, in every reflection, and I just hadn't been paying attention. Maybe once you see it, you can't unsee it. Like those optical illusions where once someone points out the hidden image, you can never look at the picture the same way again. Maybe it had always been standing in the reflected hallway, the reflected conference room, the reflected everywhere. And the only thing that had changed was that I'd become aware of it. I don't know which possibility is worse. The last thing I want to tell you about happened 3 nights ago. This is what made me decide to write this down, to tell someone, to get it out of my head and into words. I was lying in bed. It was late, well past midnight. I hadn't been sleeping well for weeks, as you can imagine. The bedroom was dark. The mirror was still covered. I was lying on my side, facing the wall, trying to think about nothing, trying to force my brain to shut down. And I heard the fabric move. Not the breathing, not the gentle undulation I'd seen before. This was different. This was the sound of the fabric being pushed aside, the soft rasp of cloth against wood as it was moved from the inside. I heard the thumbtack at the top pull slightly, straining against the fabric's weight. I heard the cloth fold over itself. I didn't move. I lay there facing the wall, eyes open, listening. Behind me, the fabric settled, and then the room changed. I can't describe this properly, but I'll try. The quality of the air in the room shifted. There was a presence behind me, not a feeling, a presence. Something had moved into the space of the room, something that displaced air and occupied volume and existed in 3 dimensions. I could feel it the way you can feel a person standing close to you in a dark room. The warmth of another body. The faint disturbance of the air from their breathing. It was behind me, standing between the mirror and the bed. I could feel it there. I don't know how long it stayed. I don't know if it did anything. I lay perfectly still, facing the wall, breathing as evenly as I could, and I waited. At some point, the presence receded. The air thinned. The room felt empty again. After a while, I heard the soft sound of the fabric falling back into place. I didn't move until morning. When I got up and looked at the mirror, the fabric was exactly as I'd left it. Thumbtacks in place, no gaps, no displacement. If something had come through, it had put everything back exactly the way it was. I checked the mirror itself. I pulled the fabric aside carefully and looked at the glass. It was a mirror. My reflection looked back at me, tired, pale, eyes bloodshot from no sleep. Just me. But on the glass, right at the center, at about chest height, there was a mark. Small, almost invisible unless you were looking for it. A smudge like a fingerprint, but on the wrong side of the glass, on the inside of the mirror, where no finger could reach. I touched the glass over the mark. I could feel my fingertip, and beneath it, the cold, hard surface. Solid, impenetrable. The smudge was behind it, inside the glass, or on the other side of it. I covered the mirror again. That was 3 days ago.